The rain hammered against the windows of our small cottage in the Cotswolds, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. Amelia, my wife of 15 years, was late. Again. It wasn't just lateness. It was the secretive whispers on the phone, the way she flinched when I touched her, the new perfume that lingered in the air after she'd left for work. I'm Quentin, 46, an IT consultant. My life was once a predictable, comfortable routine of coding, gardening, and Sunday roasts with Amelia. We weren't the most exciting couple, but we were solid, a team, or so I thought. The first crack appeared about 6 months ago. Amelia, a teacher at the local primary school, started working late. New curriculum, she'd explain, her eyes darting away from mine. I didn't suspect anything at first. Teachers are always overworked, right? But then came the phone calls. Always hushed, always taken in another room. One evening I was working from home when her phone rang. She was in the shower, so I glanced at the screen to see who it was. Unknown number. I wouldn't normally pry, but something felt off. When she came out, I mentioned the call. "Oh, it's probably just a parent," she said a little too quickly. "I'll call them back later." She never did. The perfume was another red flag. Amelia had always worn the same light floral scent. Suddenly, she was wearing something richer, muskier, something that didn't smell like her. I asked her about it once. "Oh, it was a gift from a student," she said, shrugging it off. But I'd seen the price tag on the bottle. It was expensive. Then came the deleted messages. I know, snooping through someone's phone is a violation of privacy. But I was desperate. One night while Amelia was asleep, I couldn't resist. I picked up her phone, my hands shaking, and started scrolling. Most of her messages were gone, but I found a few that had been incompletely deleted. Fragments of sentences, suggestive emojis, a name. Barnaby, Barnaby. Who the hell was Barnaby? My mind raced. A colleague, a former student, an old flame. I spent the next few days in a haze of anxiety trying to piece together the puzzle. I Googled Barnaby in our town. Nothing. I checked her social media. No Barnaby. It was like he didn't exist. I started following Amelia. I know it sounds crazy, but I had to know. I'd leave for work at my usual time, then circle back and park down the street from her school. I'd watch her walk in, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. For days, nothing happened. Just the usual routine of school drop-offs, playground duty, and after-school meetings. Then one afternoon, I saw him. He was leaning against her car, a tall, handsome man with a confident smile. He was wearing a tailored suit, not the kind of clothes you'd expect to see on a teacher. Amelia walked up to him and they embraced. Not a friendly hug, but a deep, passionate embrace. My heart shattered into a million pieces. I watched them talk for a few minutes, then they got into her car and drove away. I followed them, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. They drove to a small, secluded hotel on the outskirts of town. I parked across the street and watched them go inside. I sat there for hours, the rain pouring down, my mind reeling. Amelia, my wife, the woman I loved, was cheating on me. With some guy named Barnaby, in a cheap hotel. The reality of it was almost too much to bear. I felt like I was going to be sick. Finally, around 7 p.m., they emerged from the hotel. They looked happy, relaxed. Amelia was laughing. It was like they didn't have a care in the world. I wanted to scream, to confront them, to tear them apart. But I couldn't. I was paralyzed by shock and grief. I followed them back to Amelia's car. They kissed goodbye, a long, lingering kiss. Then Barnaby walked away and Amelia drove home. I waited a few minutes, then followed her. I needed to confront her, to demand answers. But I also needed to gather my thoughts, to prepare myself for what was to come. When Amelia got home, she acted like nothing was wrong. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and asked how my day was. I wanted to slap her, to scream at her, to make her feel the pain that I was feeling. But I held it in. I needed to be calm, to be rational. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Okay," she said, her brow furrowing. "What's wrong?" "I know about Barnaby," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Her face paled. "Barnaby," she stammered. "Who's Barnaby?" "Don't lie to me, Amelia," I said, my voice rising. "I saw you at the hotel this afternoon." She burst into tears. "Oh, Quentin," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry," I said, incredulous. "Is that all you have to say?" "Sorry, it just happened," she said, her voice muffled by her tears. "It was a mistake." "A mistake," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. A mistake that you made multiple times, a mistake that involved a secret hotel rendezvous. She didn't say anything, she just kept crying. Who is he? I asked, my voice shaking with anger. He's a parent at the school, she said, her voice barely audible. A parent, I said, my voice rising again. You're sleeping with a parent. Are you out of your mind? It just happened, she repeated. I don't know how it happened. Well, I know how it happened, I said, my voice cold. You made a choice. You chose to betray me, to lie to me, to cheat on me. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. Please, Quentin, she begged. Don't do this. I'm sorry. I love you. Love me, I said, laughing bitterly. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. I turned and walked out of the house, leaving her sobbing in the living room. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there. Not for another minute. I drove aimlessly for hours, the rain still pouring down, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, sadness, betrayal, confusion. How could she do this to me? How could she throw away 15 years of marriage for some fling with a random parent? I ended up at a small pub on the coast. I ordered a pint of beer and sat in a corner, trying to make sense of what had happened. The pub was mostly empty, just a few locals huddled around the bar, talking in hushed tones. I felt utterly alone. After a few hours, I decided to go back to the cottage. I needed to pack my things to figure out what to do next. When I got back, Amelia was still there, sitting on the sofa, her face red and swollen from crying. Please, Quentin, she said as soon as she saw me. Let's talk about this. Let's work things out. There's nothing to talk about, Amelia, I said, my voice flat. It's over, I'm done, but what about us? She said, her voice rising. What about our life together? What about our memories? Our memories are tainted now, Amelia, I said. Every time I look at you, I'll see him. I'll see you in that hotel room. I can't live with that. I went upstairs and started packing my clothes. Amelia followed me, pleading with me to stay, but I ignored her. I packed everything I needed, then went back downstairs. I wrote her a note, telling her that I was leaving and that I would be in touch about the divorce. Then I walked out of the cottage for the last time. As I drove away, I looked back at the house, the place where I had spent so many happy years. It looked small and insignificant in the rain, a symbol of a life that was now over. I spent the next few weeks in a small hotel in London, trying to get my bearings. I contacted a lawyer and started the divorce proceedings. Amelia called me constantly, begging me to come back, but I refused. I couldn't forgive her. I couldn't forget what she had done. One day, my lawyer called me with some news. We've discovered something interesting, she said. It seems that Barnaby isn't just a parent at the school. He's also a wealthy businessman, and he's been giving the school a lot of money. My blood ran cold. What are you saying? I asked. I'm saying that your wife may have been having an affair with him for more than just love, she said. She may have been using him for his money. I was stunned. I had always thought that Amelia was a good person, a decent person, but now I was starting to see her in a different light. Maybe she wasn't the woman I thought she was. I decided to do some digging of my own. I hired a private investigator to look into Barnaby's finances. What I discovered was shocking. Barnaby was not just a wealthy businessman, he was also a notorious womanizer. He had a long history of affairs, and he had a reputation for showering his lovers with gifts and money. He had given Amelia expensive jewelry, designer clothes, and even a new car. But that wasn't the worst of it. The investigator also discovered that Amelia had been using Barnaby's money to pay off her debts. She had been secretly gambling for years, and she had racked up a huge amount of debt. She had been using Barnaby to bail her out. I was disgusted. Amelia hadn't just cheated on me. She had used me, manipulated me, and lied to me. She had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I confronted her with the evidence. She denied it at first, but when I showed her the bank statements and the receipts, she broke down and confessed. I'm sorry, Quentin, she sobbed. I didn't mean for it to happen. I just got in over my head. Not sorry, I said, my voice cold. You're sorry you got caught. I ended the conversation and hung up the phone. I felt a strange mix of anger and relief. Anger at Amelia for what she had done, but relief that I was finally free of her. The divorce was finalized a few months later. Amelia got nothing. I made sure of that. I took everything, the house, the car, the savings. She was left with nothing but her debts and her shame. I moved to a small cottage in the countryside, far away from Amelia and her lies. I focused on my work, my hobbies, and my friends. Slowly but surely, I started to heal. One day, I received a letter from Amelia. She was begging me to forgive her, to give her another chance. She said that she had learned her lesson and that she was a changed woman. I laughed. After everything she had done, she still thought that I would take her back. She was even more delusional than I thought. I wrote her a short note, telling her that I would never forgive her and that I wanted nothing to do with her. Then I threw the letter in the fire and watched it burn. I knew that I would never be able to completely forget what Amelia had done, but I also knew that I couldn't let it define me. I had to move on, to rebuild my life, to find happiness again. And that's what I did. I started dating again, and I eventually met a wonderful woman who loved me for who I was. We got married a few years later, and we lived happily ever after. Amelia, on the other hand, never recovered. She lost her job, her friends, and her reputation. She became a pariah in our small town. She was left with nothing but her regrets, and that, I think, is the greatest revenge of all. Not to seek retribution, but to move on and find happiness, while the person who wronged you is left to wallow in their own misery. Years later, I heard that Barnaby had dumped Amelia for a younger woman. Karma, I suppose. I didn't feel any satisfaction, just a sense of closure. My life was good and hers was not. That was enough. The rain has stopped now. The sun is shining and the birds are singing. I'm sitting in my garden, sipping a cup of tea, feeling grateful for everything that I have. I've learned a valuable lesson from my experience with Amelia: to trust my instincts, to be wary of people who are too good to be true, and to never, ever take love for granted. And to Amelia, wherever she is, I say this: you may have broken my heart, but you didn't break my spirit. I am stronger now, more resilient, more determined to live a happy and fulfilling life. And for that, I thank you. So, to you, dear reader, if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, remember my story. Remember that you are not alone, that you are stronger than you think, and that you deserve to be happy. Don't let anyone steal your joy. Fight for your happiness and never give up on love.